Hi, and welcome back to part 4 of our series on emotionally intelligent leadership. So we've looked at what leadership is, we've talked a little bit about what emotional intelligence is and the 4-branch model, and we've tried to bring it to life by looking at the movie clip and just seeing how it was enacted in kind of a Hollywood setting, just to try to give us some connection. Now we're going to look at this question of how your emotions are impacting your thinking, how they're impacting your behavior. And some of us carry this view that we can disengage from our emotions, that we make fact-based decisions, we're in an engineering company or an actuarial or a finance guy looking at a spreadsheet, and we're thinking, well, no, I make evidence-based decisions all the time. My emotions don't drive my decision-making. I don't know what you're talking about. Maybe that's true for some people, but not for me, because I don't let my emotions impact my decision-making. I don't let my emotions impact my behavior. I can control all of that. Well, unless you're a machine, that's not as true as you think. And one of the reasons is because the parts of our brain that deal with thinking and feeling and acting, they're what scientists call interpenetrated. They're all deeply connected. So the same regions. So you don't have, to a certain extent, the brain is topographically mapped. Certain parts of the brain do certain things, but it's not nearly as discrete as people used to think. So there's a language area, and there's an executive area, and there's an emotion area, and there's a memory area. There are parts of the brain which are more or less engaged in different activities. But whenever you're doing anything, multiple regions, multiple connections, all light up at the same time, all interacting with each other, sending signals back and forth. So while we can think about the part of your brain that deals with feeling, and the part of your brain that deals with thinking, and the part of your brain that deals with acting, and we can study those and we can discuss them in an academic paper, in real life your mind is not making those distinctions, can't make those distinctions. So how you are feeling affects what you do, affects what you think. How you are thinking affects what you feel and what you do, and what you do affects how you feel and how you think. They're all connected all of the time. So you can think your way into a better way of feeling. You can feel your way into a better way of thinking. You can act your way into a better way of thinking or feeling. So they're all completely penetrated. As an experiment, if you start to frown now, you will begin to have negative thoughts. If I frown at the screen for a couple of seconds and you start frowning back, you'll get annoyed with me that I'm not moving on. You begin to get impatient. Where's the impatience coming from? This feeling of impatience, this sense that your time is being wasted. Where all of a sudden these thoughts start popping into your head, these feelings start happening in your body because you start to exhibit an emotion. The same with smiling. If you start to smile, and people will smile back at you, so there's a double benefit. But you get more pleasant thoughts, you feel lighter, your body feels more energized. So all of these things are connected all of the time. So we can't help our feeling and our thinking and our acting interacting with each other all the time. We're not robots. That's just not how we're built. It's just how the software works. So all those regions are interpenetrated. So just for a second, on a scale of 1 to 10, so 1 very, very bad, 10 very, very high, 1 low, 10 high. How are you feeling now? 0, really down, horrible, bad mood. 10, yeah, really happy. I'm in a really good, positive state of mind, really having good thoughts. Where would you put yourself on that continuum? And then on the second continuum, how much energy do you have? You're tired, sitting watching this video for hours and I want to go back to the Gladiator movie. Or are you, oh no, actually I've just been for a run, or just been playing with the kids, or just been petting the dog, and I've had a cup of tea and decided I was going to sit down and watch a bit more of this video. So hey, yeah, I'm pretty good right now. Where would you sit yourself on both of those axes? And it really matters. Where you sit on those axes really matters. So if we plot how much energy you have on the y-axis, from low to very high energy, and how you're feeling from unpleasant to very pleasant on the x-axis, we will produce a 2x2 matrix. And obviously the IMI they're not quite a business school, but we're not that far away from being a business school, so there's going to be a 2x2 matrix at some point in this talk. Here it is. So once we have those two plotted, we can start to think about, well, what kind of emotions are you feeling? And then what kind of activity, what kind of action are those emotions most likely to generate or most propitious for? So The obvious one is very pleasant, high energy, which is characterized by the emotion joy. You're in a very joyful, happy, positive, upbeat mood. Ideal for brainstorming. We talked about that in an earlier video. It's ideal for inspiring people. It's ideal for connecting people. It's ideal for motivating people, getting people all fired up. So you need to be high energy, high positive to get people fired up, and you need to get them to that space too. Well, what about the bottom right hand, as you look at it, the bottom right hand corner, which is you're still in a pretty good mood, but the energy level is low. So you're a little bit tired, energy level is a bit low, haven't had caffeine for a while, but I'm still feeling pretty good about life. So which is contentment, a relaxation, meditative state, reflective state, contentment. Very, very good for reflection, for pausing to think about life, for pausing to think about, okay, we've just had a brainstorm, we've had 45 great ideas all thrown up on a whiteboard. We need to drop the energy level down now and think about, well, okay, so what are the good ones? Which are the ones that seem to be landing? What will work with our customers? What would work with our consumers? What are the competitors doing? We start to get consensus and a conversation going now. Can't get a conversation and consensus going when people are still hopping off the walls and sticking up, post-it pads and, I've got another one. You need to bring that energy level down. So that the meditative state, mindfulness state, that's all about building consensus. It's all about reflection, about thinking through stuff in a quiet, calm, reflective space. So that's the right mood. And if it's a thing that you need to reflect, you need to make sure you get yourself into a positive frame of mind, but a low energy physical state with a positive frame of mind. We're coming back along the axis, so you're in a pretty low energy state and you're in a pretty bad mood. Well, what's that good for? So sadness, And we talked about shame as a sad state. So right down the depressive states are right down the end. So the inability to get out of that sad state is characterized as depression. But energy's not great, and you're not in a great space, not in a great frame of mind. What that does is it heightens your awareness of error. It heightens your awareness of problems. It's your amygdala, it's part of your brain back here, which is your brain's threat response, threat center. Largely, it's the threat center. That's saying there's bad stuff in the world. Bad stuff happens. You need to be aware of bad stuff, and you need to be watching out for bad stuff. So in that frame of mind, slightly low energy, slightly bad mood, you're much better at finding problems. You're much better at spotting errors. You're much better at risk analysis. You're much better at risk mitigation planning. You're much better at identifying where things might go wrong, of challenging how this idea mightn't work. What are the flaws in our argument? People in that state of mind are much better at finding those things. Remember, they're not making up bad stuff. They just have a lower tolerance for that. They have a lower threshold at which they notice the bad stuff than people in a different frame of mind. So they're not creating errors to annoy you. They're just more tuned into the error, so they see them quicker than you do. They see more of them than you do, which is really useful if you need some risk mitigation done. It's really important that you have people in your circle who do that well. They can't do that all the time because they just annoy us. But you do need, at the right point in the meeting, you do need somebody who's going to be in that frame of mind, who's in that energy state, who will just check in with us and check our plans, just make sure that we're not missing big problems. And it's actually one of the reasons why you might argue that the universe has been designed. If you were looking at a detailed Excel spreadsheet and you wanted to find whether there was an error in there somewhere, a formula has been copied the wrong way, or there's a gap in a formula somewhere, the mood state you need to be in is this one: low energy and not particularly pleasant. And as it happens, checking spreadsheets for errors reduces your energy and makes you feel sad. So there you go. It's already been designed for us. But seriously, folks, error checking, error diagnosis, analysis, this is the right mood state that helps us to do that properly. And then lastly, what about anger? Surely to God, there's no place for high energy bad, which is the anger, the irritation, frustration, anger, rage. That anger emotion, there's no place for that in work. Well, anger is one of the fuel emotions. It's one of those emotions that drives activity, that drives action. All of the great injustices of the world have been solved by angry people. Gandhi or Nelson Mandela. These people were enraged emotionally intelligent enough to direct that rage towards a useful solution, but angry, annoyed. This just is not right. So if something bad has happened, if an injustice has happened, if there's something going on with one of your people that's not okay, anger is what gets you out of your seat to say, I'm not putting up with this. I'm not going to stand for this. That's anger. And what you need to do is allow the anger to get you out of your chair, but manage the anger by the time you get to your boss's office when you're going to tell her what the problem is. So use the fuel, use the anger to go, do you know what? I am not standing for this. I'm not going to let this one go. I'm going to have to go and challenge this behavior. That gets you up and out of your seat and marching towards your boss's office. The disengaged part, that's the emotional part of it. The emotional intelligent part of it is make sure you've disengaged from that anger by the time you open the door, and then you're going in to have a conversation that has the fuel to get you going, but also has the intelligence in it to have a reasoned conversation that's likely to get you to a good place. So as we look at that continuum, there are all kinds of things that we need to do in our lives that require different kind of emotions. And the more we know about the connection between how we're feeling and how we're thinking, the more likely we are to be able to get ourselves into the right feeling space that creates the right kind of thinking, that optimizes our thinking. That's how we use our emotions to make us smarter, to make smarter decisions. Anger is one, I found it quite a bit working with Irish organisations. I referred to the book that I wrote with Henry Evans earlier on. We talk about this thing called terminal politeness, and it does kind of characterise a lot of Irish organisations. We're terminally polite, we're very nice to each other, we're very civil, we're very polite, nobody fights with anybody, conflicts are all driven underground. One of the reasons you find that is because the bullet point here, people don't get into healthy conflict because they're afraid of what might happen. They're afraid what will happen if people get upset. They don't have the emotional intelligence skills to handle anger and to use it, to direct it to the right place and to use it wisely to generate movement. So a lot of organizations are far too far to the left on this curve. Not enough conflict. The relationship between conflict and performance is a parabola, or is curvy linear. When I do this presentation in the States, I have to say curvy linear, because in North America they do math, because they don't know there's more than one type. So a curvy linear relationship means as the amount of conflict rises, there is an improvement, an increase in the performance to a point where it becomes nasty and personal, and then it drops off. So what's really important is that we're having the right conflict, we're having it in the right way, that when people are annoyed or peed off or irritated, that they allow themselves to feel that emotion, and they allow themselves to use that emotion to generate the right kind of conversations, to generate the right debate, to generate the right kind of pushback in a way that, remember, that challenges the idea, be angry about the idea, be irritated about the idea, but protects and nurtures and honors the person. We're not trying to be angry with people, we're trying to be, and generally it's actually not the person, it's probably their role. An awful lot of times when we're in conflict, we're in conflict with a person's role, not with that person. And we would be in conflict with whoever was in that role. And if this person was in a different role, we wouldn't be in conflict with them. So remember that it's an awful lot of times in organizations, the conflict that we're trying to have is with people's roles, not with their personality. But it requires us to be able to understand both anger and the use of anger to generate enough conflict so that we hit the right point on that performance curve. So, well, what can I do? That's all we're talking about. But what can I do as an individual? What can I do to leverage my emotions so that I can use my emotions to fuel the right kind of thinking? Well, remember, it's fuel. Use your emotions as fuel. Remember the 4 points of the graph. Which kind of thinking do I need to be engaging with, and therefore which kind of emotion should I be feeling, and how do I get myself into that space? So use the emotions as fuel so that you can generate the right kind of action. So in order to be able to use these emotions, remember we talked about the continuum, you need to be able to get into more than one emotion. You need to be comfortable with more than one emotion. You need to regularly feel more than one emotion, your most comfortable emotion. So to challenge yourself and things to think about, and just play around with these ideas over the next day or two, and ask your nearest and dearest, ask people who work with you, just challenge this kind of stuff. Can you change your feelings? Do you get stuck in a funk of one mood? How long does it take you to get out of that? So if you're the kind of person who gets stuck for a long time in a mood, you need to work on what are my strategies for changing that, because I'm going to have to change my mood depending on the kind of thing I need to be doing. Can you feel what other people feel? So we're going to talk a little bit about empathy in the last part, but not just understand that that person is happy, sad, angry, ashamed, but what's that really like in your guts to feel that emotion? Can you feel that, or do you avoid it? Like the kind of person who, I don't go to funerals because I don't want to feel sad. I'm not comfortable around sad people. You know, somebody's turned up in my office and they're sad. I'm beginning to cry. Oh my God, get HR in here quick because there's somebody crying in my office and I just don't know what to do. Or there's somebody being angry at me. I just freak out. I can't. Oh no, I run away. I just can't handle anger. Oh my God, I just give in. So, how comfortable are you with feeling lots of different emotions? How comfortable are you being around people who are feeling lots of different emotions? You don't have to feel it with them. You don't necessarily have to be in a wallow with them. But can somebody be angry in your presence without that freaking you out? Can somebody be sad in your presence without that freaking you out? So how comfortable are you with feeling emotions? How comfortable are you with being around other people and honouring the fact that they are having stuff going on in their life and that's okay? Are you able to psych yourself up, to get yourself going, really have this big meeting, really have this big plan? Can you get yourself up? Can you just energize yourself without using stimulants? So the answer is not always caffeine. So to get yourself going, what's the answer? Is it, you know, Adderall or caffeine? Or a huge swathe of the population, particularly more so in North America, are self-medicating with things like Adderall in order to study, in order to think, in order to concentrate. So what's your strategy? If you have to psych yourself up, can you do it? Can you do it in a healthy way? Can you do it in a sustainable way? And can you do it for others? If you have to go into that room and we need to get a brainstorm going and I need all these people to be fired up, what's my plan? Or I'm going into a room full of really angry people and I need them all to settle down. What's my plan? So how good are you at leveraging your own emotions? A lot of that is the signature emotion that you exhibit. David Caruso, who has done a lot of work with the Savoy Mirror model, talks about it as a tandem. So if you have people who are in a very angry state and you need to get them to a calm state, there's two ways to do it. You can be very calm and wait for them to come down. That is a very, very sophisticated strategy. People who do family counselling do that. So the family is all shouting and roaring, and the counsellor will just sit quietly and speak in a quiet, calm tone, even with just keep speaking in a tone. And eventually people will notice that she's sitting there speaking calmly, and one will start to listen, and one will start to listen, and one will start to listen, and somebody else will kick off, and eventually the room will quieten down and they'll start to listen to her. Extremely sophisticated skill, not the kind of thing that people should be practicing without an awful lot of training. More likely what we do is we join people, similar level of energy to where they are, and we bring them down. So people who are in an angry state and they're kind of all fired up, you need to get yourself to that state too, or at least close to it. You need to get pumping out a big lump of energy so that we connect at an energetic level, and then I can start to bring my energy level down and you'll start to come down with me. But I can't drag you from here to here. That's very, very skillful. But I can come to about here and then start to pull you down with me. So that's about matching the energy signature like a tandem. You need to be running at the same speed as the person you're going to give the baton to, which is why David used this tandem race, this baton race, relay race. You need to be handing over the baton as fast as the other person is running, and then they can run, and you can run slower and run slower. So can you bring people up? Can you get people down? What skills do you have around doing that kind of stuff? Can you grab people's attention? Do people notice you? How do you get noticed? Are you the person in a group meeting who's always leaving the meeting going, oh, I was going to say that, or I was just about to say that, and then he said it, or and actually I said that 2 minutes ago, and then somebody else said it, and now they all think it was his idea, or there's somebody making a suggestion and everybody goes, oh, that's really interesting. And you think, but I said that. I said that 5 minutes ago. What? So that's about your ability to grab attention. Do you command attention? With Maximus and well, to a certain extent as well, with Marcus Aurelius, the Caesar, the command presence. What kind of presence do you have? Again, it's not about big, aggressive, macho stuff. That tends not to work anyway. But what kind of signature energetic presence do you have that gets people to take notice of you? An awful lot of that is to do with your self-schema. Do you see yourself as a leader? Have you managed all this emotional stuff going on inside you that allows you to stand tall and take yourself seriously and feel like somebody that others should follow? Because it's only then that people will start to follow, because well, if you don't believe in yourself, you can't expect them to either. So if you're not grabbing people's attention, think about the energy signature. Think about how to what extent you're standing in your space, you're owning your own energetic space. You're giving off the right vibes because inside you believe in it. You're pumping out your self-belief. That's the kind of stuff that will help you to manage all this emotional stuff that's going on around you, and then connect in the energetic way with people that grabs their attention. And you won't find that people making your points, because people will remember that you're the one who made them. A lot of this, particularly people who are who want to know more about this, if you have a scientific background, if you have an academic background, you really want to know more about this. And a lot of people who are listening to this will be thinking, oh, I must go read. I must read a book. I must read an article. I must go find out more about this stuff. You don't need to find out more. You don't need to get more into your head. You don't need to intellectualize or think your way to this. You need to get into your body. Allow yourself to feel stuff. Allow yourself to feel what other people are feeling. Allow yourself to feel your own emotions. Honor your own emotions. Don't be running away from them. If you're sad, then you're sad, and there's probably a good reason for that. And then feel it and honor it. Don't wallow in it, but honor that emotion. What is that about? What's that telling me? What's this emotion trying to signal? Or what am I angry about? Anger is we feel anger in relation to being blocked from something we care about. If you're angry, you're being blocked from something you care about. But that's interesting to know. What is it that I care about? Why do I care about that so much? Why am I investing so much in that thing that when I don't get it, I get angry? Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting thing that you could play with. So get out of your head, get out of thinking about it, and feel, genuinely feel. And for most of us, for most of the executives I work with, they tend to be much better at cognitive elements of emotional intelligence, and they don't do so well with the feeler part. So if we show you pictures of a seascape and I say, well, what does that mean to you? A lot of the executives will say, well, nothing. It's just rocks and sand. What are you talking about? No feeling. It's just a picture of abstract stuff. People who are like artists, creative people who are really good at the feeling stuff will have a whole range of emotions that get brought up by looking at sea or pebbles or flowers or abstract art. So to what extent do environments inspire you? Do you allow yourself to feel? Do you cry at sad movies? Do you laugh out loud at funny movies? Or is it all kept very much in tramline? So get out of your head, get into your body, allow yourself to feel what other people are feeling, and then develop the skill of disengaging. Emotional intelligence is not about being more emotional. It's feeling the emotion and then knowing when to disengage from the emotion. So we step ourselves up, feel a bit more, be able to disengage, feel a bit more, be able to disengage. It's a bit like ramping up the speed in your car. You got to increase the power in your car and the power in your brakes at the same time. No point getting a more and more powerful car and forgetting about the brakes. So able to engage with emotion, able to disengage with emotion, engage with emotion a bit more, heightened ability to disengage with emotion, so grow both muscles at the same time. So what did we talk about for that last section? Emotions are not just about feeling. They affect what you think, how you think. They affect how you act, what you say and how you act. If we understand this really well and understand that 4-branch model and understand that 2x2 matrix, we can actually figure out the kind of mood I need to be in, the emotions I need to be feeling in order to generate the right kind of thinking or to optimize the kind of thinking that I need to engage with. And when a leadership act is difficult, when times are tough, when I really need to step up, it's emotion that will give me the fuel to do that. Sometimes that's the anger emotion, but sometimes it's sadness, sometimes it's happiness, sometimes it's relatedness, sometimes it's surprise, sometimes it's interest. So novelty, jealousy, whatever. Emotions are fuel. They provide fuel that allow us to act. We can leverage that fuel when we really need to step into a leadership moment and there's something holding us back. We need that extra kick. It doesn't have to be caffeine, it's actually inside you. And it's the emotions that you feel if you can connect to them. The last point I want to leave you with, because a lot of people talk, when we get to this point in the conversation, a lot of people talk about stress. Stress as one of the emotions that people are feeling, and particularly now, a lot of people are feeling quite stressed. So in order to understand, well, what does stress mean and what can we do about it, there are a couple of things to bear in mind. Stress causes your body to produce a substance called cortisol. Cortisol is a bit like nitrous oxide in a car. It's meant to kind of fire short-term action. The fight or flight response that people talk about. That's produced by cortisol and adrenaline or noradrenaline. So, which as it turns out are neurotoxic. So you're supposed to feel this in short bursts. It's supposed to make you run away from saber-toothed tiger. It's not supposed to be in your body all the time. So when we're stressed over a long period of time, our body is producing this short-term burst over a period of time, which is toxic for us and causes lots of bad reaction. The kind of things that it does, particularly in executives, which we have to be very careful with, is it makes you default to heuristic reasoning, which means you fall back on what you know and you don't look for novel solutions. The IQ advantage that the performance advantage that high IQ people have under conditions of stress falls back. So if you have a high IQ group and a low IQ group and you give them a problem with no time constraints, the high IQ people are going to come up with a much better solution. The low IQ people will come up with the best they can, but they're not quite at the same level. If you put people under severe time pressure, you get the same response from both, because the high IQ people are too stressed to access the top 2% of their intellect. So that bit that we hired them for, if you stress people out, the really expensive part, the top 2 inches of their head, you're not getting any of that. They're too stressed to use it. They're just falling back on what they knew, what worked before, what the default reasoning is, what heuristic rules of thumbs that they can access under conditions of stress. So stressed people aren't able to think at their best. It damages your immune system, and you would have seen a lot of that now. One of the things that we all need to be doing is boosting our immune system, staying strong, staying healthy. Being stressed will reduce over time. Does reduce your immune system, will make you more subject to colds and flus and all kinds of viruses. It also reduces your ability to burn fat. Cortisol in your system reduces your ability to burn fat. Effectively, your system is going, we're in lockdown. We're like, we don't know what's going to happen here. The system is under threat. So whatever calories you have in your body, save them, because we don't know what's going to happen and we might need them. So you're stressed, even though you keep putting fuel into your body and you're going for a run, you're doing all this stuff, you're not losing weight. That's a signal that you're stressed. So you're managing your diet, you're taking your exercise, but you still can't shift any weight or you're not losing any weight. That's a really important signal, particularly for execs, that you're stressed. You mightn't realize that you're stressed, but your inability to drop your body fat is your body storing calories because it's stressed. It doesn't know what's going to happen next. So getting on top of your stress, managing all this emotional stuff, having good strategies around managing its anxiety or depression or anger or frustration, having good strategies around all of that emotional stuff that's coming up for you is the way to manage the stress levels, so that we reduce the negative impacts of stress, both on your physical body, on your mind, but also on your physical body.